Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. So we've got a really interesting guest, and he's actually our current channel sponsor. So Nathan Rosidi is the founder of Strata Scratch, which is a great platform for learning and just practicing up on your technical skills for interviews. He's also a pretty seasoned data scientist and is currently in a role where he's hiring both analysts and data scientists. So I think we've got just a huge amount of ground that we could cover. And I think let's start off with this question, Nate. What do you look for when you are hiring a data analyst or data scientist?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for having me. So as you mentioned, I am in a role where I do hire both business analysts as well as data scientists. I've been doing that for several years across various teams. And so, what do I look for when I'm hiring someone? So essentially, it falls under two large buckets, right? So obviously, the first one is just your technical skills, the foundation of which you are going to be basically tested on day in and day out, right? So, how are your Python skills, coding skills, SQL skills, whatever they may be.
Wait, can we pause here and drill down on that? So what would you
Sure.
say are the like the skill stack you needed for a business analyst versus a data scientist?
Yeah, very, very different skills. And I feel like it also differs between what company you're at and the type of product that they put out, right? So obviously, you're a data scientist at, say, like a tech company like Facebook, Google. A data scientist may really, really be like the skills that are needed there. You might have to have a lot of machine learning skills, a lot of actual software development skills. Where you are able to put things into production, right? But you just call yourself a data scientist, for example. Maybe other companies that are not so like in that tech field, maybe more traditional companies, you may not need to actually have all of those skills. Maybe it's a lot more like statistics, for example, that you really need to hone in on. So you can call yourself a data scientist, but you can have completely different skills. And then that's sort of the same thing with an analyst, or I'll say like a business analyst, for example, where you may not need machine learning or developing those types of algorithms, but you need to know statistics really well. You need to work with large data sets, but you really need to have a lot of industry knowledge to be able to ask the right questions, to then analyze it in the right way, and then present it to your stakeholders in the right way. So it's really like a different competency, I would say, different skill sets between a business analyst and a data scientist. And
Yeah,
again, differs by industry and business.
It's interesting because I think I identify, which I don't know, you got to be careful with identifying with things, but I think I see myself as a business analyst. And you're exactly right. So I kind of carve out the projects and then bring in, data science consultants if I have something that kind of gets out of my wheelhouse in terms of a consulting project. So I've actually got a new project now. Well, it's a potential. So I just sat down with a client that does influencer marketing, and they're interested in building a tool where you can web scrape all of a company's social media data and then run sentiment analysis on it. And so the tool may not be the right path or the right way to talk through that. It may be that this isn't kind of a partnership where they'll have the client and then I'll just bring in the data scientist to do the web scraping and then the sentiment analysis. But this is essentially like a productized service offering that they could upsell to their existing client base. So I can't do, I could use like import.io to web scrape web data, but I can't do the sentiment analysis really well. But I kind of laid the groundwork for, I actually just sent an email out to Ken G about seeing if he might be interested in partnering on that.
Oh, nice. For him to do the sentiment analysis?
Right. Well, I know he's a data scientist. I'm not sure if that's like kind of his wheelhouse or not, but yeah. And the client deal might not close. We just had kind of a pitch meeting 2 days ago.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
So would you agree that that's kind of like, I'm the one who's bringing in, I understand marketing really well, and I understand how it plugs into this potential client's business. but Ken might not understand that nearly as well, but he's got kind of like he's got like power tools that I don't have access to.
Yeah, that's another interesting sort of delineation there too, right? Because as a data scientist, you have all the tools you need. You have essentially not just tools like what you code in, for example, or your infrastructure, but you do know like the algorithms and the frameworks that you need to use, maybe like the data cleaning techniques that you need to implement to actually get your work done. And it doesn't actually matter what the data actually is, whether it's, you know, sports data or healthcare claims or like, you know, user type of email data or anything like that. Maybe it doesn't even matter. You just do the same thing over and over again because you have the tools and frameworks you have, right? But as a business analyst, that's rarely the case, because what tools you actually use, it really depends on the market you're in, the industry you're in, and also your experience, right? And I think, and I think that's where you're getting at. Like that's kind of like your wheelhouse, whereas a data scientist may just kind of be able to plug in to really any type of question and solve it using their skills.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been kind of wrestling with this, getting back to like labeling myself. I kind of feel like I'm essentially a management consultant with business analytics skills. Or would you say that that's what business analysts do, is that they drive, I guess that's probably accurate, that business analysts drive recommendations pretty much across the board. I mean, it is kind of similar to management consulting.
No, that's exactly it. Like at the company I work for right now, we are in the business department, right? These are essentially just all MBAs or undergrads that, you know, majored in business. But then there are some just hardcore PhD data analysts, data scientists that come in and do their work. And they are not only supposed to do their data science work, but they're supposed to also talk to their stakeholders, drive business decisions, everything a business analyst would need to do at the same time, right? So I do think, yeah, like it's either the more seasoned you are or like the different type of job, like business analyst, or just a data scientist that's really seasoned. Like eventually what you're gonna have to do is, you're not going to just have to make an impact with like your code. You're going to have to make an impact on the business. And sometimes that means asking the right questions and kind of like making an impact that way, right? And just hand-holding people along the way.
That's interesting. So if I were to kind of sum what you just said, if you're trying to break into the data science space, you need to really focus on hard skills early on in your career. But then once you get kind of to, I don't know, a certain threshold, learning additional hard skills won't improve your career. You need to learn how to apply like the tool set you have to actually solving problems. And then that's what you can pitch to make more money or move up in a company.
Exactly. And that was the second bucket I kind of wanted to get into, was essentially that, right? Your experience and your knowledge and your softer skills are really gonna be much, much more valuable later on than in the beginning of your career. I mean, they're valuable even then, right? But you also need to prove that you're gonna be very competent in your hardcore skills and prove your worth and value that way. And then over time, as you just get more and more industry experience, your work just becomes way more efficient, right? You're not going to be working 60, 80 hours coding every week. Like you will know how to analyze things in the right way and then ask the right questions so that you're not just spinning your wheels day in, day out.
Yeah,
so you become way more efficient at your work.
You develop an intuition is kind of how I phrase that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so towards like, you know, after several years of that, you just become very efficient and you pick up new responsibilities. And the higher you go, I feel like there are not always right or wrong answers. It's just how you bring people along and how you get support that's really important. Because if things kind of go sideways, right, and you're the guy that tried to basically make that recommendation without any support whatsoever, you're going to be essentially the scapegoat and get all the blame. But if you bring everybody along and it turns out to be great, then that's good. And if you bring everybody along and it goes sideways, at least everybody's wrong with you.
See, I think that kind of the analytics and data science space is a little bit unique from most professions. So like if you were to get into marketing, your manager wouldn't look to you for advice, but especially with like medium-sized companies that I'm working with, if you come in as like the entry-level analyst, you have like just such a rich, robust knowledge base to where they a lot of times they know hardly anything about analytics, which I think it kind of flips that like direct report versus manager dynamic quite a bit. The analogy that I kind of like have used in the past to explain it, it's like, have your parents ever asked you to fix their iPhone or their computer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they know nothing about it. And that's kind of, I would say that, I guess it applies to technology in general, but like, yeah, getting in that, like early on in the career, that's really where you should be grinding specifically on your hard skills, and maybe even before your career starts in school. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And I teach on the side, right? And so every semester I have about 40 to 60 students that are also aspiring analysts as well as aspiring data scientists. And all they're really concerned about is getting the right hard skills needed to, get a job, get their first job. And I think that's exactly what you should be trying to do, is get the skills needed, like learn how to code, learn how to just use the tools that are available right now to get a job. But in doing so, apply it to real life problems, apply it to projects that projects that are like very, very much industry related. Like you can find those on, say, like Kaggle.com, right? Like something that's industry related.
I was just going to ask you, do you have any advice on how you can get your first experience within the analytics space?
Yeah, that is a tough one because it's so competitive, right? I think it's even going to be more competitive in the next few years, for an entry level person to get their first job. My advice, and what I did when I was younger, was I built up like a portfolio of projects, and I posted that on GitHub, right? Just like an artist would with their paintings or whatever it is. Like you do need to build a portfolio so that people can see what you've done, right?
So what were the use cases though? That's kind of what I'm like wondering.
Yeah,
Are they just sample data sets, or are they like, did you get them from a real place?
No, I built stuff that I wanted to build, right? And so I think I don't think you should be doing this. Like all of that work to build a portfolio is really time consuming, right? So if it's not coming from your projects at school, then it means that it's coming from your free time. So I've never been like the one to just like go on a regular, random Kaggle project and just like do it, because it's fun, but like it's not useful for me other than just putting it in my portfolio. And if if that's good enough to incentivize you, then that's totally fine. But what I might do is I might find certain data sets really interesting, like sports, right? Or just kind of like video game data sets. And I might just analyze that because it's really fun to do that. Or I might build, I think you had an example about parsing through data where you have a big data set and you wanted to apply sentiment analysis on that, right? Like just kind of doing that. If that's really like something that you're really interested in, connecting to maybe the Twitter API and then grabbing that data and just analyzing that. I mean, that's something you can do in the weekend and then post it on GitHub and just sort of, have that in your portfolio.
Yeah, cool. So I do like that. I think that So when getting to your point about like actually taking on a project and finishing it, I need a deadline, or I need to be really, really passionate about what I'm doing. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think that for sure is a great one. Is just like if you're into because I'm not a huge fan of fantasy football person, but like that's essentially like data analysis, right?
that's all it is, right? That's all it is. I'll even take it a step further. If you have just some experience in that, you've done like 1 or 2 projects on that. If you need an extra bit of incentive, why not just go on one of those freelance websites like Upwork.com or Fiverr? Try to find somebody that needs your help in analyzing data. And the incentive at that point could just be money, right? Somebody's going to pay you like whatever amount
Mm-hmm.
per project or per hour. And that's incentive enough for you to actually hone in your skills and actually deliver something of impact.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. The one thing that we've kind of been working through in a sense is I think that there is a huge opportunity that people don't even think about. And I think that's philanthropy or volunteering. And if you can get involved in the nonprofit space, are you involved with any nonprofits right now?
No, not right now. I used to be though, and so I know exactly what you're talking about. They are always under resourced, with and need help,
Well,
right?
they're
And
data
so
phobic too. Like they don't,
yeah,
they are afraid of numbers. Like I don't mean to like cast a wide net, but I mean, I've been in the nonprofit space for over 2 years now. And the majority of the people that are on our board are very much like I just want to feel and I want to do good in the world. And it's like, they're not the kind of people who are like, all right, well, what's the return on investment for that? Like they don't speak that language. So you can
mhm.
come into a nonprofit and really have a huge impact. But so essentially what I've been trying to push is go and reach out to a local nonprofit that's in your community and start building impact analysis reports, because that is what will help them get more funding. And you can tie that back, and then you can also get like, maybe even on LinkedIn, say I volunteer for this company. You could get like a LinkedIn recommendation from their executive director, and you can
Yep.
also add that specifically, since it's an impact analysis, it's actually marketing material for them, so you can actually use that on your Tableau Public or your GitHub or wherever you want to
Mhm.
post it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think like the common thread through all of these examples and suggestions are whatever you're gonna do, just make sure it has an impact, right? So
Right.
if this is supposed to be something that will help you get a job, then on your resume, it should actually have the not only what you did, but the impact involved. And that's very different than just having, a dozen random projects on GitHub and just say like, look at my code, look at how clean it is, and look at how accurate my random forest model is. It's not going to impress people that are actually in the field
Mm,
hiring for data scientists, because everybody can do that.
interesting. So a kind of a hot topic that's coming up in my world, since I just published a Power BI certification course, is what is the actual value of a certification? Because I think that, and I'm totally shooting myself in the foot here, I don't think certifications are the cure-all ticket to getting a job like some people assume they are.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Like, I don't understand what is so valuable about these certifications. It just kind of means that you've completed something, right? So it's the same thing as a degree, like at a 4-year university.
Well, I kind of brought this topic up because it's kind of piggybacking off the having 10 different GitHub portfolio pieces, but there's no outcome. Like all you're showing in a certification is that you can answer questions right, and you know where to push buttons, and you know how the interface works. It's not showing that you actually can apply this to solve real world problems. Though I
Exactly.
will say this, I mean, it can set you apart. I think it could be kind of a branding piece of if 5 people apply and only one of them has the certification and they use Power BI at that company, that might get you an interview, but I'm not sure it's going to like seal the deal.
Oh, I think you cut off for just a split second. But I
It,
think like it could set you apart, I think is where we left off. But Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think in a very competitive space like analytics and data science, every little thing you do can just set you apart just by a few inches, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
when you are in the beginnings of your career, all of that stuff actually does matter. So I think, yes, if you have an opportunity to get a certificate, yeah, go ahead and get a certificate. But you shouldn't do it just to get that certificate, right? It should be a good course or a good boot camp, good program that at the end of it just gives you a certificate and you're just like, okay, that's great. As you are actually climbing, the corporate ladder, as you are a little bit more experienced years later, like that, the stuff that used to set people apart just by mere inches, like now is setting people apart by like feet, if not miles, right? People just tend to like have different experiences that put other people ahead or put you ahead of other people. Other people may not be able to kind of catch up to you just based off of experiences that compound over and over and over.
Can you give like a more concrete example? I feel like I'm having a little hard time following like what you're saying there.
Okay, yeah. So, for example, say that you're early in your career, you have a few certifications, and then you get your first job, and you are in a cohort of other business analysts, data scientists that all have exactly the same credentials you have. It's a certificate, it's a degree from a college. You guys are all the same age. You have one or two like jobs kind of in your resume,
Mm-hmm.
but there are people that are very content with just like keeping up with just one skill, where there are other people that will go out and learn like new techniques. They will maybe gravitate to other industries to learn like what's going on in that industry. So over time, like people that just keep up with the market, people that just keep refining their skills and adding on to it, tend to just do a lot better later on in their careers versus people that,
Okay.
you know.
I see what you're saying. So you're saying like you and I are both 23 years old. We got the, Microsoft certification. We got our first junior analyst role.
Mhm.
If I kind of rest on my laurels and just get the next Power BI certification, the next,
Mhm.
I might get to, I don't know, senior manager. But if you are proactively like not only keeping up with your Microsoft certifications, but you're also learning about marketing analytics and how it plugs into sales analytics, and you start to learn code and you start to really just immerse yourself, in 10 years or 20 years, you might be CTO or CIO versus senior
Yeah,
manager. So it's kind of like an
exactly.
exponential graph.
Yeah, and so I guess my point was more like don't just think about your career as getting certifications and things like that. It's really just about gaining a lot of experiences, whatever that may be, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really about making an impact, just not doing a ton of Kaggle exercises and all that. And so over time, you just gain the right amount of experiences, the right types of experiences, and um, your career is just going to take you wherever you want to go.
I don't mean to be bleak, but I think that the point is, well, to get to your point of like why are certifications so popular, I think it's just a form of self-soothing through consumerism.
I see. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
First, so Microsoft's like, here's the path. You need to study this, and you need to learn this, and this, and this, and this. And then if you do all this, if you're a good girl or a good boy, then you are going to have this badge. You have a gold star now versus, I went out and I joined a nonprofit. I became the treasurer. I actually recruited someone who's really good at finance, and I helped turn this nonprofit completely around. That's like a more proactive. I'm out in the world. I'm solving problems.
Mm-hmm.
I'm creating versus consuming.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the thing about certifications, especially as like here's a data science certification, whatever, or Python certification, is like, it's just really like the analogy of that is a certification of like, I know, like a plumbing certification or electrician certification.
Mm-hmm.
it gives you like a standard, right? And that makes sense, but there's nothing more than that. So I think it's really about getting to your first job and then making an impact, and that, you know, that will propel you forward. It's not getting another certification and then hoping that you get a promotion.
Right. I mean, because yeah, if we kind of pit this in an interview setting, if someone's like, well, what have you done over the past year? And you're like, well, I got the Microsoft GA 100 exam certification, and then I also got the Tableau desktop specialist, and I also got a Microsoft SQL. That's a boring narrative versus like saying, oh yeah, I went out to this company. I realized that they're not collecting their sales data correctly, and I was able to completely revamp their data governance. And oh, by the way, we discovered that, you know, they were missing out on this huge industry opportunity because of the analysis I've done.
Yep, exactly.
Cool.
That's way better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm trying to get this. That this is like one of the main kind of focal points of the podcast is like getting people to tell better stories about themselves, which it's not. Well, you're an educator, so it's
hard to do. It's really hard to do. And I think like when you are young, like in college between 18 to 22, and even like when you're in your first job between the ages of like 22 to 26 or whatnot, right? Like you just don't know what the hell is going on most of the time and what is actually important in this world. And I think you don't really get a sense of what your value is until later on, right? I mean, at least that was my case, right? And so I really was concentrating and focusing on developing my skill set, my hard skills, and just like being really good at my job, but completely missing some of the softer skills that I had to develop later on. And I think if I had to do it over again, I think I would have tried to balance that out a little bit more. So that, I mean, I think that's what a lot of the younger generation is going through right now. And I see that with my classes.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to close out the podcast on is, so you've been teaching for a while, specifically in the analytics space. What are the major mistakes or common pitfalls of those, specifically kind of in the education space? Like those who are like not yet cooked, they're not out on the marketplace, but they're getting their education.
Yeah.
Where are they making mistakes?
Yeah, there is one huge place that they're making mistakes, right? And so this is kind of just going back to what I was talking about is they're trying to learn, say, like, I teach SQL and Python for data science, data analytics, and business analytics. And so a lot of my exercises and a lot of the whole point of my class is really to use code and use those languages to solve like a business case, right? So I see a lot of people a lot of my students are trying to get the syntax right so that they can get to an output. And so that's fine in terms of developing your skills, your hard skills. But when you look at the analysis, it's just really, really simple analyses. They're not like overly complex. And at the end of the day, at the report that they turn in, it doesn't actually analyze much of anything other than like 6 inches deep, basically, like a really shallow analysis. And then when you ask them questions to think about, like, okay, well, what if you analyzed it this way? Or what if you did this instead? They won't even know like what to do, how to use their coding skills to even do that, right? Like I've taught them exactly, I've given them all the tools that they need. They know all the functions that they need to use on the data set to analyze it. But if I kind of just give them a curveball or ask them to go one level deeper, they don't know how to apply their tools. So my advice is essentially learn how to solve problems, learn how to like approach problems in the right way. Because if you are able to do that, your actual analysis becomes way more creative, way more complex, and very, very impressive to the person that reads it. The syntax and the coding, that is all just, you will get there.
It's secondary.
Yeah, it's second. The whole point of going to school is learning how to think, right?
So, well, I don't know though, not anymore. It seems like going to school now is so you don't have to be an adult. That seems to be
Yeah.
the new thing. It's like, especially with like the amount of like, I don't know, all the lavish furnishings and the manicured lawns. It just seems like early adult daycare. And maybe that was just my undergrad experience. Like I didn't really learn to solve problems until I got out of my undergrad and then worked a terrible job for 3 years. And then I was like, oh, there's stakes. I think that's what's wrong with a lot of teaching, is that there aren't any stakes. Kind of like with
No,
the certification thing. You can just take it again.
I completely agree. A lot of that has to do with the actual curriculum that they teach. A lot of it, like a lot of the books that you get are just like completely outdated, or they're written by somebody like not really from industry. So trying to make that connection from like what you're learning in school to what you're going to actually be doing in industry, there's like a disconnect going on, right? And so and I just feel like you're going to have to learn it again once you get to a new job. You're going to have to learn the actual skills that are needed to be successful at your job.
Right. So the objective would be learn how to learn, not learn the syntax. So it's the more I'm digging into this, the more it's like you need to learn soft skills and critical thinking. Those are the two things that are going to, getting back to that like exponential curve of CIO versus senior manager. If you want to, really advance your career, you've got to think critically and solve problems. I would say the hard skills is important, but then you need to be able to navigate relationships as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up the podcast episode. I really appreciate your time today, Nate.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.